Hello, today I'll be discussing wisdom and character shown in the Bible and how I can lose wisdom and the fear of God and how that applies to us in real life. So to begin, we'll talk about Joseph and how he showed, exemplary characteristics like forgiveness and patience and always trusting in the Lord. Even when he was betrayed by his family, he still had faith in God's plan and that he would do, God would have him do great things. In the Bible, a story is told of Joseph being an interpreter for a pharaoh, and he believes that, without his imprisonment, he wouldn't have met them and, wouldn't be the leader that he is or wouldn't be prepared for God's blessings. So this is very important, and he helped the pharaoh, be successful in the Egyptian government and manage their finances to survive the famine. And that's found on page 46 of our textbook. And from this, he gained a lot of respect and gained some power. And so, his brothers that had betrayed him during his childhood, they showed back up, and he conducts a test of their loyalty to see, if they have changed. And, after that, his brother Judah had offered himself up instead of their younger brother Benjamin to, pay the price and be enslaved, and that showed Joseph that they had really changed, so he had forgiveness for them. In Genesis 50:21, Joseph says to his brothers, "Do not be afraid, I will take care of you and your children," end quote. And Joseph chooses to see every struggle as a blessing and to believe that God has it in his plan for him to serve a greater purpose. This shows wisdom because Joseph never turned away from God and he did not forsake him. He chose to keep his faith and his trust in the Lord. And a quote from our textbook on page 47 starts, "The beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord," end quote. And this means that Joseph, all of his wisdom comes from God. And then we'll move on to Daniel. There's a quote from the book of Daniel where he says, "In spite of present difficulties, God is in control and will have the final victory," end quote. Daniel is commanded by a king to consume a certain diet. Daniel's one of the wise men, and there's two others, and the king wants them to make them stronger, and so he tells them to eat meats and wine, and Daniel doesn't agree with this, and he doesn't believe, that it's going to make him better, so he has somebody bring them vegetables and water as well. And he didn't want to upset the king or forsake him, so he acted in private. And the king was pleased with the results without knowing the other stuff. And he put a lot of trust and reliance in Daniel and had a strange dream and requested that Daniel and the other two wise men decipher it and tell him what he means. And the serious consequence of not doing that is that they will be killed. So, Daniel's stuck. He doesn't know what it means, and so he asks the king for more time to think about it, and Daniel uses that time to pray to God. And then a quote from page 50 of our textbook says, "God responded to his prayer by informing him of the content and significance of the dream," end quote. Daniel reveals that his wisdom is superior not because it comes from himself, but because it comes from God. Quote, "There is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries," end quote. That's also on page 50. Joseph and Daniel both claim their wisdom only comes from God, and that is why it is true wisdom, and that is why they know things that others don't. And then we will move on to discuss how you can lose wisdom. Adam, in the Bible, he started off as perfect and wise. It says, "You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and beauty. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor," end quote. And that's from Ezekiel 28. It is said that, quote, "Wisdom only comes in submission to God," and that is from our textbook, page 54. And also, quote, "Wisdom is not permanent," end quote. Adam has lost his wisdom because of his pride, and he thought he knew better. He thought he had better answers than the ones that God gave him, and so he turned away from God's direction of what he told him to do, and that's how he lost his wisdom, because he lost his fear of God. Also, with Solomon, he lost his wisdom because he stopped seeking answers from God. Quote, "To be wise, one must commit oneself to a course of life," end quote, and that means to be seeking God. This means wisdom is gained when believing there is more to learn and leaning only on God for those answers. To stay aligned with God, he wants us to be in endless pursuit of him. Solomon hung out with wicked people, and they encouraged him to do things that betrayed God, such as practicing other religions and adopting their rituals. Quote, "Separate the wicked from the presence of the king, and his throne will be established in righteousness," end quote. That is from our textbook. When Solomon and Adam stopped seeking their wisdom from God is when they lost all wisdom. And then we move on to the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord means to be constantly seeking to never turn away or forsake the Lord. This is an unbreakable trust in the Lord and his wisdom. You cannot have wisdom without a relationship with God or a fear of God, because when you turn your back on him or seek someone else, that's foolish and unwise. And to apply this in my real life, I need to be constantly seeking my answers from God. And whenever I'm confused or I'm unsure about something, I need to turn to him and only him. And, listen to the answers that he gives me. I can do this by reading the Bible and trying to understand the language more and the meaning behind it, and through prayer. This means, I can only gain wisdom through God and his plan, and that it belongs to him, and that I need to live from God in order to understand his wisdom and know what to do next.